Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week as I turn this and this into these wind-blown trees made out of metal and wood. Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary items. This week I'll be making something that is a bit of a departure for me. It's something that is I think going to be very stylized, and it's something that I saw when I was falling asleep one lazy Saturday afternoon. I had my oldest daughter half asleep next to me. We were both just dozing off, and out the window there's this very large Douglas fir tree that was just getting blasted by the wind from the northwest, and it was just bending and curling, and I've seen it many times this way, but this particular moment it really struck me, and here's why. Behind me, facing to the northwest, is a very large drop off. It's probably 700 or so feet, not straight down but very steep down, and I live at a very high elevation, and the winds come blasting out of the north and the northwest behind me and just rake across my house and across the mountainside, so much so that we've seen winds that have been around 100 miles an hour up here. I've seen winds routinely that are in the 70s to 80s. Every now and then they crack over that. And when they do, some of the really tall trees that you're going to see here behind me have toppled, unfortunately. We've probably lost maybe 6 or 7 trees, beautiful, healthy Doug firs, ponderosas that have stood the test of time, that are probably maybe 100 plus years old, that didn't survive some of the big blasts that we've gotten. Point being is that my eldest daughter has a lot of anxiety about these winds. They keep her up at night. She's had some, what I would call some almost panic attacks over them. The strong winds for her and these windstorms that rattle the house do shake her nerves. Well, while I was falling asleep for a nap with her and looking out at this Doug fir tree just getting blasted, it just came to me, I'm going to make her not 1 but 2 depictions of these Doug fir trees in the wind so that she can look at them, maybe even put them up on our wall somewhere where she can see them, and they can sort of be this thing in her life. Maybe that helps relax her, maybe that helps, I don't want to say habituate, but something of that line, so that she can see something that's artistic and static, and at the same time have something that might even look a little bit, dare I say, beautiful to her, that will help her relax around these windy moments. Maybe this will fall completely on its face. Maybe she will actually get to the point where seeing these things makes more anxiety. I don't know, but I'm willing to give it a shot. So without further ado, let's get to the shop and get started. So I often doodle during church. This is the notepad that I take to church with me, and I do listen, I do pay attention, but there's moments during the sermon and during announcements that ideas will come to me, and it's a quiet time that I can go ahead and make doodles and capture some ideas. I had a hard time generating the background of this tree, the form of the tree that I was going to put the windblown branches onto. I wasn't really satisfied, but I just ended up kind of going with it. Now this is 1/4 inch thick steel. This is some really thick steel. I debated a long time about using such a thick steel, but I just ended up going with it. And I will say, this is the most cutting, the most grinding that I think I've ever done on any particular item that I've built. I don't like cutting, I don't like grinding, but it is a means to an end. So this is the base form, and then I cut out a lot of what I would call windblown branches, just the silhouettes of them, really. I save you that process in the video so that you don't have to see me make all of these cuts and all of these grinds, but in the end, they came out roughly as I was imagining. I'm going to tack weld these on and then finish them with a complete weld. And then I was going to do something that is a bit of a departure for me, and that is probably the first time that I can actually remember that I wanted something to be as shiny as I could possibly get it. Normally I darken things, I like texture, but on this particular one I wanted it to have more of a shine, more of this sort of almost silver look to it. It came out pretty good, but I realized that I don't really have too many tools that are made to make things more shiny. Be that as it may, on to making the branches, and I have 1/4 inch thick rods from a cross that I built a few weeks ago left over, so I was going to use those. I'm hammering those, as you saw there, because I want them textured. I want them to have an organic look to them, not just perfectly round and smooth. giving them more of a branch quality. And now, as you can see here, I'm going to stick this in the vise and start to smash this, and then you realize that it can snap out. Be that as it may, again, I went ahead and just continued to soldier on and make more of those. I think I made total somewhere between 12 and 20 branch pieces. Most of them were combinations of rods, a few single pieces. They look like bird's wings to me, which is great. That's actually kind of the effect I was going for. I could not find a really good way to fold these over. I really didn't come up with a good method. It was a lot of different things. But my 6-year-old came to visit me and passed her sage, wizened wisdom onto me and her critique of my methods. Let's listen. No, this is
What?
This is hard to do.
I don't think you can do it with your hands.
I did, just a little bit. Well, actually didn't. It didn't move it at all, but I wasn't going to let her know that. I wasn't going to let her think that her father is incapable of doing something. Right now, I think she pretty much thinks I can do anything, and we're going to keep it that way as long as possible. So, on a whim, I decided that I was going to put some copper impregnated into these steel wings. I often do this. I wouldn't call it a trademark of mine, but honestly, I don't know anyone else that does that sort of thing. I like the way it looks, and I was going to try 2 different methods. Normally, when I apply copper and impregnate it into steel, I will do what you see here. I will bring the piece of molten metal, molten steel over to the anvil, and I will wrap it. After I'm putting borax on it, which is a flux, I will wrap it in copper, stick it back in the forge until the copper melts. Copper's melting point is quite a bit lower than steel, so the red hot steel with borax, the copper gets kind of sucked into the metal. This is a method I've never tried before, which is where I take pieces of copper and borax and place them onto the steel and then back into the forge. Either way worked pretty great. I don't think I'll use the latter method again, but then I really enjoy this part. So this is what it looks like coming straight out of the forge, cooling it in water, and then once I hit it with the wire wheel, that copper impregnation comes out, and it looks really organic to me. I thought it turned out great. So here are those pieces ready to be applied. And those holes that you saw me drilling in, that was so that I could come from the back side of this piece and go ahead and finish welding and attaching each one of those. Now I'm making a few what I call risers to give a little lift, a little bit of relief between some of the branch pieces. Certain ones will be flat to the piece, certain ones will stick off a little bit. All right, last piece. I knew that I wanted to make basically a wood bottom so that the root system on this particular tree that I've already made is rooted in something. I don't know if that was a good choice or not, but I chose this piece of ironwood. Ironwood is just an amazing wood. It is so heavy, so dense, and extremely strong. But you got to stop, get a visit from your daughters from time to time, and all of the animals. I think they took pretty much all the animals that I have into the shop with me there. All right, back to the ironwood. I really like using this stuff. It's the fact that it is so strong means that I can cut it to very narrow widths. And unlike pine and other pieces of wood, I can put a lot of pressure into it and it's not going to snap. So then basically once I get that done, I pull out the scroll saw and I'm just going to go ahead and make this intarsia piece. I really did not do a good job here. I'm just going to be quite honest. I do bevel the edges of where the metal is going to go into because it gives it kind of an inserted, grasped look, if you will. And then I'm going to put a backing to it so that it doesn't just fall off if it rattles. And here you have it. Here is the final version. I gotta say, I like the way it turned out, but it doesn't look the way I thought it would look. And it doesn't immediately say windblown tree to me, which is the whole point. Here is where it's going to live. This is my daughter's room. And I wanted to put it on a wall that faces, so it faces in the orientation of where our wind actually comes from. So if she looks out her window with that next to it, she's going to see an actual windblown tree and then the tree that I've made for her. I do think she liked it. I think she was being kind. Her reception was gracious. Do I think it's going to help her with her anxiety and fear? Probably not. All right, thank you for joining me for this build. This was, we shall call this this could be called for me a swing and a miss. The interesting thing about this is that when I saw this in my mind's eye, and those moments that I've talked about in past videos where I'm falling asleep and I capture something in my mind at that moment between waking and subconscious, and I momentarily capture something, a vision, I caught this in my mind's eye. And when I saw it at that moment when I was falling asleep, it was very crystalline to me. The image was super clear, and I immediately in that moment thought, that's beautiful. I can't wait to make that. Then not but a few moments later, I thought to myself, I think I've lost it. I think I lost that image. And so I said to myself multiple times while I was still half awake, half asleep, Jonathan, you better remember this. You better really recollect this. And then I thought, you know what? It was close enough that I could probably recreate it. Well, truth be told, I never got it back. The image that I saw in my head, unfortunately, is not this, which brings up another point, and that is this. The past 2 or 3 builds that I have done, I've been really proud of them. I've really enjoyed them. They meant a lot to me. They came out looking great. With this, that is not the case. I give this a C-, not just because it wasn't how I envisioned it, but because I look at it and it doesn't immediately capture me as, oh, windblown tree. I just didn't do a good enough job capturing what I wanted to with that. So another learning that I had, and I mentioned this in the video, this is the first time that I can remember that I tried to make something purposefully metal shiny, actually very shiny. I actually looked for the finest buffing tool that I could find, and I got the base tree pretty close to the shine that I wanted it to be. And then what I did is I drilled holes in it, as you saw, and I came behind and filled those holes with weld. Well, here's the problem. This is the backside. I didn't do anything to clean up the backside. I don't really care. But you can see these little places where there was holes. I completely filled those with welds. I welded through to the piece on the other side, which was the intention, and then I just kept going and filled them all the way out with welds. That was a mistake, and here's why. You can see here, and especially here, that the metal, that silvery metal that I polished up, has discolored because of the heat differential. I didn't think it through. I didn't think that was going to happen. The problem is, now that these are attached, it's really hard to get at these things unless you take a lot of time and a lot of elbow grease, which I'm just too lazy to do, to get them back to a silvery shine. I did try it a little bit. I wasn't successful. Those areas turned dark. They're no longer shiny. So to me, I don't like the way it looks. Then last piece, as I'm beating myself up here, this is basically this piece of wood here. This is called ironwood, and it's an exotic wood. It's extremely dense. It's extremely heavy and very strong. I love it. So I made this. It's basically intarsia, and I really just did essentially a piss poor job at doing that. I'm just going to leave it there, and that's the last thing I will say about that. I was intending to make another one of these out of wood for my other daughter, but after flubbing this so well, I asked her, would you like something different? Would you like for me to make something other than a windblown tree for you? And she said to me, yeah, make me a shooting star, but instead of a star, make it a shooting heart, which actually is intriguing to me. So I'm excited to do that for my youngest daughter. Thank you for joining me. If you like builds that are like this, that are interesting, that are a departure, that are a challenge, that are whimsical, check out my channel for other builds that are similar to this. My next project, which is coming next week, is going to be a project that I'm very excited about. One of my friends at church just so happens to be not just involved in full armored combat, but extremely celebrated and very talented and very successful in full armored combat. Well, he has come to me and said, I have a slew of things that I need to fix up, armor and swords, this, that, and the other, before I travel for my next set of tournaments. So he's gonna bring his armor and his swords to me, and he and I together are gonna work on them, getting them ready for his coming combat. Join me for that. You'll get to meet him. You'll get to see footage of what he actually does, which is intense and amazing. And while it won't be on this particular project, he has asked me to make him a sword that he can take with him to these international tournaments and bash the heck out of people. Couldn't be more flattered and honored to do it. Until then, God bless. Have a great week.